What's up, everybody? This is the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast, a show covering our experiences in gaming every week, plus a rundown of some of the key news items in gaming, often covering impacting news you won't hear covered anywhere else. This is episode number 299 for Monday, July 17th, 2023.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 299 for Monday, July 17th, 2023. I'm your host, Towermaster99. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to be back. Actually, welcome back to myself because I've skipped a week there. I was on vacation, but I am back, and I have my other two cohorts with me. First up, Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how are you?
I'm doing well. Nice to have you back.
Thank you. And Mr. Game Logic. Game, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
That's good. All right, let's get started. We got a lot to go over. Actually, a lot of news bits this tonight, I should say. Actually, we're doing Monday here instead of our usual Sunday because of my vacation. DB, we've been playing a new game on your Xbox, Exoprimal. Please tell us your experience, because I've heard mixed, I guess, feelings, reviews on this game.
Mixed is reasonable. I played it both on Xbox and on PC. Started it on Xbox and then went over to PC looking for, because of the various classes, the precision of mouse and keyboard, just the comfortability there is nice. But it is, this is the new game from Capcom. This is the squad-based PvE, PvP dinosaur futuristic game. I guess you throw a little bit of everything into the mix. I have only played, I've played through probably about 2 or 3 only actual online matches. So you go through a tutorial, you get kind of the intro mission that kind of steps you through a couple different things, introduces you to the world, and then you kind of head off into the multiplayer aspect of this. And it's all multiplayer, but there is this, it's really interesting how they've kind of woven a story throughout, that there is, it starts off very kind of story heavy in kind of a really kind of goofy, futuristic, but fun way in terms of like an AI and over everything AI that is you are being more or less drafted into to go fight some dinosaurs. And what you learn is that you're actually kind of stuck in a time loop or going back in time to when the dinosaurs first kind of came, in this never-ending simulator of the AI, or not even a simulator, of this never-ending kind of war game of the AI that's pulling in people. So there's a lot more story going on here than I expected. I hadn't played any of the betas, so I don't know how much of this was kind of covered in the betas or if it just tossed you into the game. But it's 5v5. It is almost kind of reminiscent of, there are parts that are very reminiscent of Overwatch. There are parts that kind of conceptually feel like Gambit in Destiny 2 in terms of playing with a squad, kind of going up against the computer, moving from kind of wave to wave until you progress to the final mission, which is then a series of different ones. It can be a couple different things. I've had payload, but basically the final mission then puts you in direct contact with the opposing team, and you're trying to complete an objective, but you're also fighting off the opposing team at the same time. And so that's where the PvP parts come in.
So it's 5v5. It's not asymmetric.
No, it is 5v5. Yeah, it is not asymmetric at all. Because even when you're playing on the PvE end in the first couple of waves of things, trying to get to the final mission, you are, you've got a bar up top, a status bar up top that shows you how far the other team has progressed through each of the different missions, trying to get to the center. You get an announcer who tells you if you're going faster or slower than the other team. So that part is asynchronous, but then you head into, well, in some ways it's not even really, it is multiplayer, but then it kind of accumulates in this active synchronous multiplayer piece. So that's kind of the setup. It is one of the things I really kind of enjoy what they're doing with all the different designs. Some of the exosuits very much are Reinhardt or Mercy from Overwatch. But one of the things that is nice about them is that you have the ability to jump from exosuit to exosuit at any point in time during the match. So if your loadout isn't quite right, or you're coming against a different enemy type where you want to swap and move from something that is more melee focused versus ranged, or something that's a tank or a support here class, you've got the ability to jump out of your exosuit, and you have a little bit of, you're there as just an exposed human, and so you got to jump back into another exosuit, which you do through through button press. So it's not like Titanfall where you have to run and get in your Titan and try to navigate the map and stay alive at that point. So it has that ability to have another layer of strategy if you're coordinating with a team. Playing kind of random has been fun, but I can certainly see the benefit because of the different character classes, right? Like the ability to kind of coordinate and complement each other. Like there are certain classes that have buffs and debuffs to each other, and so there's a real benefit of playing as a team.
All right, so I had a couple questions.
Sure.
So once you get to the PvP, is it just become a deathmatch then, or?
So there are multiple. I've only played like I said, it seems like there's multiple different modes in that final one. Like the first two I played were payload. So it ends up, but it says the assignment for the final match is, and then it gives you kind of the instructions. And so there's it seems like there's the potential for that to be mixed up a little bit. And how much of that cycles through, I haven't played enough to know, or actually I haven't read enough to know what all those different modes are there as well. So I would think if there's a payload, there's probably some type of control point. There's probably is some type of deathmatch. It seems like it has that ability. You're still kind of in the world map. So you have powers that have cooldowns, in addition to your primary weapons, you have weapons and then an ultimate as well that has a cooldown and a build up meter. Basically it's a timer. It's not even like a meter that you need X amount of kills to pull down your kill streak or anything. So mechanically it feels pretty good. It runs, running both on PC and an Xbox, it runs pretty smooth and quickly. There's a lot of dinosaurs thrown at you at one point in time, and there's moments when it's a little bit of Monster Hunter, when you get a really big dinosaur and you've got to kind of, somebody has to use stasis and somebody else uses some of their heavy weapons, and somebody's healing because you got to get up close. So or you got to get around certain, armored areas of the dinosaur. So it mixes it up kind of nicely. It's also big dumb fun, right? I mean, there's also this Earth Defense Force aspect of it in terms of just waves of dinosaurs crashing at you and different, just mowing them down or kind of funneling them through the geography. So yeah, I mean, it is a lot more fun. I've had it installed for a couple days and just couldn't convince myself to give it a try. And then this weekend I gave it a try and then started looking at the battle pass like, maybe this could be interesting. It seems like some of the unlocks are kind of high up in the battle pass. So we'll see kind of I haven't got far enough in to see if seems like it's set up right for daily missions or weekly missions, something like that, to get additional XP. But it has very similar kind of progression mechanics that way of other battle passes as well.
And when you get to the PvP sections, also, are they still throwing dinosaurs at you, or is it just pure?
Yeah, they're still throwing dinosaurs at you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. And then finally, when you said you can like switch between the different suits and stuff, can you do anything as a regular human, or it's just you got to jump to that other suit and otherwise?
I have not tried to, like, if you don't jump out with a gun, so it doesn't seem that way. So yeah, I don't think so. It kind of really pushes you in. It's the idea that you're a little vulnerable in that switch. Like if you didn't spec out loadout right, or you want to change for the dynamics of the map and the mission, that there's a risk reward there. You've got to have a little bit of vulnerability in order to swap up into something that should complement your team better.
Okay, nice. Game Logic, any comments or questions?
It's kind of tough for me to get a read on this one. It's not being received very well critically, but the Steam community, I forget, I was just looking at it, has it rated right now as mostly positive at 75%, which is, they have better reception for this than they have for Halo Infinite right now. So that just makes it tough.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like from what I've played so far, the moment-to-moment gameplay is enjoyable. Whether it has deep enough hooks to be something that people stick with for a long time, or it just becomes the game of the week for people to try. I could also see from a full review type of way, it's relatively bare bones in terms of what's there. It's still pretty early, but surprisingly, it does there's a lot of work in the kind of pre-rendered cutscenes as well. Like there's in between certain, you progress, you run enough multiplayer missions, and then you get to the next cutscene, and then it tells you X number of more missions, and then you are at the next cutscene. So it's kind of doling out this larger kind of conspiracy story around the AI as you're moving through. So there is some kind of extrinsic incentive just on a story component, in addition to the leveling up battle pass aspects, things like that.
So I'm trying to say this without sounding overly rude, but I'm playing a multiplayer PvP game. I don't care about story. So my questions are, I mean, are there multiple maps?
I have no idea. I have not played it enough to say. I mean, yes, there are. How many of them? I don't know. Right? You're on an island that has different topography and the city, but for right now, most of what I've been going through has been different corridors within the city. So, So yes, there are different maps. How much they vary, I can't speak to yet.
Okay, and weapons progression?
I think so. I haven't dug too far in, but not in like the same level of like Call of Duty aspect.
Okay. Paul's Gaming Live in the chat said, it's kind of like Gambit in Destiny. It's got play to win unlocks, unfortunately. Some of the best heroes don't unlock till level 40, or you can pay to unlock them.
Yeah, like the sniper class doesn't unlock until you're kind of at the top end of the battle pass. So depending on, there are 10 classes, and yeah, some of them unlock pretty far in. And so that's where the challenge might be to speak to Paul's piece of, how stingy it's going to be with XP Battle Pass progression, or how much it kind of wants you to kind of speed up in order to get to some of those characters. And it'll be interesting to see what the first couple rounds of patches look like how much they nerf or buff if people aren't unlocking some of those. I can see where the balance of the game becomes drastically different if they've balanced it for all those classes, and those classes are either they're not in the rotation as much because of the stinginess of the battle pass. But yeah, I would agree with him in terms of it definitely has a Gambit feel to it, and that's part of probably why I found myself enjoying it more than I did, because it wasn't straight deathmatch, that there were some objective base PvE in there as well.
Yeah, the pay to unlock would the key parameters for me for a game like this is it's got to have maps, it's got to have weapons progression, there's got to be some type of meta around it that keeps me hooked. But that thing, and it's got to have a grind that feels good. Like, if the grind doesn't feel good, then I'm out. And the notion that while I'm grinding, some yokel can pay to unlock snipers, which essentially unlocks camping, that would drive me through the roof.
So that seems kind of weird, though, because this is a full price game, right? Or, well, it's a paid game.
Yeah, it's a full price game. I mean, it's $60. So
60. Okay, yeah. So it seems kind of weird that they would have those pay to win features in it too, also. But you could get to, if you grind, obviously, and you get to level 40, you can just do that on your own, right?
Sure. Yes. I mean, it does unlock. It's not necessarily.
So does the battle pass just give you like XP boosts then, I'm assuming?
It's a lot of cosmetics, some weapon skins. It seems, I haven't, just kind of skim through it. So yeah, there's some classes that are in there as well. But yeah, again, I think, it'll be interesting to see what that meta looks like, because the PvP part is one segment of it. So if the sniper is really powerful in the PvP, but is really squishy in the wave-based pieces, there could be some balance there as well. So I'll be curious to see. My track record with these is that I don't stick with them long term. Like, it's the flavor of the week type of thing, and I'll play around with it and see. But so maybe next week I'll have a little bit more understanding of how steep that hill is, how steep that grind is, in order to kind of progress.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going
to say, so on the PvE side of it. It's just waves. Like, you don't have to do any missions for those in those rounds.
At this point, I haven't seen any kind of missions aspect there. You're kind of moving from one spot to the other.
So it's more just like a Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood, World War Z.
Yeah, it has some of that. Yep. I don't know. Potentially Paul's Gaming has been playing more than I have, so I'll let him speak to anything else.
Well, he just says in chat, you can level up your hero. Plus, there's a universal mod system that works across all the heroes. And the question, now I'm almost forgetting what it was. Yeah, I had a question for you. But okay. So you've been playing on Xbox, I guess, I assume via Game Pass. And then
PC via Game Pass as well.
Okay, all right.
Oh, so it is on Game Pass. Okay, interesting. Might have to check it out. It's on Game Pass. All right. Anything else, Game Logic? For Exo Primal? No? All right. Let's jump over to you. Yeah, we've got a couple games here. Some Switch and PC action. So tell us about your gameplay experience.
Yeah, so over on the Nintendo Switch, I think middle of last month, the Lara Croft collection was ported to the Nintendo Switch. Lara Croft collection is I don't know if you guys remember, but it's kind of the 3/4 isometric view, the Lara Croft and the Last Guardian and Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris that came out, I think originally on maybe Xbox. Was Xbox Arcade still a thing back then?
Yeah, yep. The original, it was a 360 kind of digital only release. Yep.
Yeah. So they got ported, and like I said, a week or a couple of weeks ago, I'd kind of taken my eyes off the and resign my position in the pets movement, the port everything to Switch movement, but kind of got back on it in the last couple of weeks, and this game came across my radar. So I have actually, I'm sure you guys hold on, don't fall out of your seats. I have been playing in handheld mode on the Switch OLED, and man, I gotta say, I don't know that there's a better game like suitable for handheld gameplay on the Nintendo Switch. Like that, it is and I'm only playing The Last Guardian so far, but let's see. Oh, Slow-Mo Backslap, who is one of my co-hosts on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, is in the chat. It says, yo, and Paul's Gaming responds. So thanks so much, Slow-Mo and Paul's Gaming Live, for coming through. We appreciate you. But yeah, I've been having a hell of a good time. Like I said, playing on the Switch OLED in handheld mode with the Joy-Cons. Lara, that Last Guardian, you kind of forget because it's been a while since people have played it, but obviously the full-blown Lara Croft games can be some of the most infuriating puzzle-based games on the planet. And they're ones that I rapidly just hit that point where I want to throw a controller at the screen. But The Last Guardian, I don't know whether it's the viewpoint or the level design or what. Again, and this was a game made by Crystal Dynamics, and I think they worked with Eidos Montreal on it. So it's kind of weird in that it's going to sound strange, but it has puzzles that make logical sense to me. But I love the combat options in it, right? I mean, already, I don't know, 3-4 hours into it, I've got dual Uzis, dual pistols, an M16, and obviously the shaft that you get from the, undead Aztec warrior or whatever. And it gives you a lot of combat options in each different space. There are obviously environmental things that are presented with your ability to grapple, your ability to drop bombs, and remote bombs and set those off, when enemies walk over them. And it presents a pretty wide degree, wide variance of enemies, right? Even in the early stages. So really having a good time with it. I'm glad, that I haven't been playing the Switch a lot. I'm glad to see that good games are still being ported to the Switch, from the PC platform and from other platforms. So, yeah, having an overall good time. I think it was, I want to say it was like $25 in the eStore. So, not a horrible price to pay for, 2 games that probably offer, I don't know, maybe 4 to 8 hours of, of stuff, and obviously you could stretch that with some of the side mission content as well.
Yeah, I remember enjoying those. I think the perspective helped me with the puzzles because you could see a little bit more than kind of the over-the-shoulder traditional, Tomb Raider aspect of it.
Yeah, I think I got the first one from, it might have been Xbox Gold at one point. I'm sure probably both of them were on there at one point, but and I played a little bit of the first one, but I didn't really get a chance to get too far into it. But what was the reasoning to go handheld? Was it just to try it, or you kind of had to, or?
Yep, I flip a coin every time I go to play. It's just that most of the time it winds up being, that I play it in docked, right, on a TV screen. Yeah. Coming in the chat, Paul's Getting Live says, I remember on the 360, it was one of the games that had Avatar Awards.
Yeah, that's where you would unlock something for your, clothing or whatever for your avatar, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, which I think maybe they still do every once in a great while, but that's pretty much dead.
Has anyone gone in and updated their Xbox Live avatar anytime recently?
Not for a while. I did back on the original Xbox One. I would do it every once in a while, but I haven't for a while. I think for a long time too. I couldn't get into that app. It always crashed on me. So I was like, yeah, whatever. So I think I have some long coat with a championship WWF or WWE championship belt right now. I don't have avatar, but yeah, it's kind of funny. All right, and your PC game, which is one I've never heard of, I don't think.
So this is like a fear-inspired one, right?
It definitely has undertones of fear when you play it, and I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the developers to see if they're cast-offs from the old Fear team. I think they actually are. I think I did see a mention that there are some Monolith devs in there, which would put them close to Fear. But this is a PC game. It's available on Steam. I I don't think it's available on the Epic Store. I think it's available on Steam and GOG. But I came across this one when, I often, recommend to people, when you use Metacritic as a discovery zone, right, for games, don't just look at the front page. Also realize that there are, if you go past the front page and you go to the database pages, also realize that the first page is only 1 through 100, that there are pages behind that. So I came across this game because I, have it on my task list to periodically go and kind of review all the games that have come out, this year, that are listed on Metacritic. And I have a couple toggles to make me go back and look at past years too. But this one I came across because I was digging pretty far down on the list. So down, I think on Metacritic, this game is like an 80 or an 81. So it's pretty far down the list. But it's a game on PC. It's a first-person shooter. It has some interesting design approaches. And we got Brap over in the chat too. So thanks a lot, Brap, for coming through, listen to the show. But Trang is, like I said, it's a first-person shooter. It's got some very interesting design hooks, some of which I haven't entirely figured out just exactly how they work. So it's one of the rare. It's a little old school, maybe in certain aspects from a PC perspective. It has a cheat section in the menu. So I don't know if you guys remember old games like that, but if you go back to like the original Half-Life source or Half-Life, there was you could bring up the console and access cheats, and then some other games were like this. They just had cheats like listed right in the menu, and this has one of those approaches. There's like 3 columns, I think at least, of cheats. And so one of the cheats that is particularly interesting is ADS. And so this is a first-person shooter where you have no access to ADS as you're running around. And at first I thought it was locked behind a challenge level. And so I thought the challenge level was hard. And I think it has like 5 challenge levels in hard. I think it's like the 3rd. And then I think it has 2 levels above that. So I put it on hard, but I still didn't have access to ADS. So I think ADS is even trapped behind at least making 1 through of game completion, which you can complete the game in 4.5 hours if you try and mainline the game. I'm probably tracking around an 8-hour completion time-ish. But going through and digging through some of the forums and, some of the developer comments, one of the reasons for that is because they wanted you to play the game at a certain speed. And they felt that giving you access to ADS tends to make people slow down as they sight in. Now, what's interesting is, and again, you mentioned the fear thing, there is kind of a slow-mo button. No offense to slow-mo in the chat. There is a slow-motion button that you hit that will, just like in Fear, right, that will slow down time. And so I basically utilize that as a crutch, as a substitute for having ADS. So it's the same thing. Like you get access to weapons as weapons are dropped. You eventually get access to them via supply drops as well. And so there's submachine guns and a sniper rifle and kind of Uzis. The dual pistols, I think, is another thing that's locked behind in the cheat codes. So I think you don't get access to that until you play one single playthrough. There lies the rub, right? When I finish this game, it's highly unlikely that I'm going to go back through and do like another playthrough. Other than to just kind of verify that I now have access to some of those things that are normally put at your fingertips in a first-person shooter. Graphics are they're at Fear level, which I still think, like in general, Fear is kind of a good-looking game. But they've obviously been upgraded to 2023. The animations are not entirely smooth. Again, that it feels not as much of an issue because you spend a lot of time I spend a lot of time going into slow motion mode as I go into combat. But in general, it's pretty good, and it's a nice kind of, DBQ, you often mention the term palate cleanser. It's a nice kind of palate cleanser shooter on the market this year, when we have so many games coming out that have performance problems, right? That only run at 60 frames per second and are capped even on PC. That we have games like Jedi Survivor and Redfall that are out that haven't been issued, patches to really entirely solve their frame rate problem, right, on various platforms. So, playing this on a RTX 3060 Ti, I'm definitely getting, 135 to 165 frames per second, all depending on where I am in the combat. There's just like Fear, there's not like, and I was actually just talking about Fear like a few weeks ago, because I was kind of revisiting, games I was playing in 2005, and it has some scary moments. It has some kind of moments that kind of wig you out, but nothing like Alma. Though, and I was commenting on Fear, and I was like, Alma still creeps me out to this day, 18 years later, right? It just kind of bugs the heck out of me. But other than that, it's pretty fun, and like I said, it's a good palate cleanser, in comparison to a lot of the other things that I've been playing this year. Let's see. Yep, yeah, that was it. Sorry.
Nice. Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. I was kind of watching a video there as you were talking because I had never heard of it before, obviously, because it's kind of a smaller game. But yeah, it's definitely have to check that out at some point. DB, any comments or questions on that?
No, I just appreciate that there is not a Trepang 1. They start right with 2, right? It is a spiritual successor. It definitely, from what you're saying, it nails what it's trying to be, right? It's not trying to be necessarily a modern game with all the bells and whistles. It is made within this mindset of that period of time, which I appreciate, kind of a developer nailing what they're trying to get.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One thing I should say, like, I don't, like, I remember hitting, those first few encounters with the AI in Fear and kind of being flipped out, right? Because the only thing we'd really been exposed to, right, and, was anywhere near it was maybe Ghost Recon. And as Ghost Recon went on, the AI got more and more horrible. So, but like, I remember encountering that AI the first time in Fear and going and having to like take a break after the first time I went into like the warehouse room and the guys were like cutting back and forth and like using cover. And I'm like, hold on, dude. So, it's been, the AI in this game is not quite as fearful. Of course, I'm 18 years older as a gamer, right? So my responses aren't quite the same, but the AI definitely does things like, it's a bit of a spoiler, but there's one point early in the game where you come off of an elevator and there's 4 enemy soldiers there with shields in a line. And I'm like, how am I supposed to deal with this, right? Because they're not, you don't have grenades at that point. I actually dealt with it by like hitting slow-mo, there are desks on either side of this room. So I like dashed to the left, jumped on a desk, jumped in the air behind them, and then spun around and shot them and was able to, take a couple of them out and then just kind of constantly ran around the other people with shields. So there were a couple of levels that like, one level where like my health got so low, and there are kind of boss characters in some of these encounters that are more heavily armored and have like higher armament. So I've beaten like 3 of these guys, or 4 maybe 5. And in one of them, you get access to kind of like I don't know what I want to call it, but like a rotating barrel machine gun that like takes a few seconds to spool up. So you get access to, at least in that case, some good weapons. There's one set piece where you're fighting kind of these zombie-like creatures, and you have to be careful because you can't just kill them. You actually have to knock their health down enough, and then for a couple of them, you have to run up and grab them and throw them into a reactor. So you have to kind of fight your natural instincts that you gave to that time, which is just to pump them entirely full of lead. You have to hold back for that one shot. So it creates some unique kind of tactical situations, and it definitely has AI that, at least for me, will kind of tax you and will behave kind of out of the norm. It's a little hard. I think the one knock against it is it's a little hard sometimes on the screen. It's very dark. Again, going back to the design of Fear. It's very dark in a lot of these areas, and you have a flashlight, but it doesn't like completely illuminate. And they're moving very fast, and you don't have ADS. So, many times I have to use that slow motion thing. And I would also say maybe my other knock is the ballistics on the grenades are just kind of weird. Like I don't have, like when I throw when I don't have a firm like awareness of like where exactly it's going to land, and vice versa, right? They like appear and you just see the grenade sign, like the red flashing grenade sign but you don't really have any conscious awareness of them like chucking a grenade at you. So there's a few things, but again, it's super small development team. It's an indie, well performing game, from that aspect.
Do you have regenerative health, or do you gotta do pickups?
You have to do pickups. Now there's ample health strewn around the level. When you get into those big pieces where like the one part that I had the greatest difficulty with is they sent like 4 squads, and like each time you beat a squad, you're like, oh yeah, okay, let's, where's the exit door going to open up, and then you hear the radio chatter, and it's like it's Alpha 1. And you feed that, it's Alpha 2, like Alpha 3. Okay, certainly after the third wave, like Alpha 4, let's go. I'm like, when are we going to be done here? So, but yeah, there are, and so when you go through that, and you're picking up health as you go through each of those multiple waves. Health is additionally spawning on the level, right? So there's also that notion too of in those larger set pieces, like at a certain point, you're going to use up all the health, that's available on the level. And same thing, it has health and armor.
Oh, okay. Ammo's plentiful, or, ammo, I should say.
It is, I don't know if I would use the term plentiful. It's not Doom Eternity level stingy, but you will definitely, when you're running through a level, so you hit points where you start the mission and you select the 2 weapons you're going to have. And in the course of that mission, in the course of that level, one of those weapons you're going to run out of ammo, and you're going to have to switch. And I don't mean pick up an enemy weapon. You're going to have to pick up an enemy weapon that's different because you haven't found the type of ammo that goes along with that. So there are kind of some forced switches. You do get access to ammo upgrades, by the way, which kind of come up on the screen, kind of like it looks a lot like Crysis does in terms of that weapons layout when you hold the weapon up, kind of sideways, and you see the upgrades available. You hit points where you open trunks that have the upgrades available. So you find the parts, and then once you find the parts, then they're available for you to use at a mod station. So it's a little kind of stingy in that way. Like you don't just find, you don't just have universal access to various upgrades. You find them, and then there are points in the level where you can attach them.
Nice. Cool. All right. So for myself, look, since I was on vacation this past week, I haven't really played a whole bunch, but I did go back to one game on the Switch. That's Mario Odyssey. Still picking away at that, and I believe I'm on the last level. It's finally hit Bowser's World, so I'm assuming that's the last level. But you never know. Sometimes they kind of. I know you can kind of keep going because I don't have all the moons or anything. That's probably never going to happen. But when I say I beat a game, I'm just talking about the story, but I hadn't beat this level yet. I just got to it, and I hadn't even started yet because I had to get familiar with Mario again, even though it's Mario, and you think, oh yeah, you can. It's probably pretty easy, but it's just how the way the world works. It's a little. I just kind of forgot how things are, so I was trying to get my sea legs back on there. So I was playing around on the previous level before that, which is kind of like this. It was like a cook. The enemy was like this big bird that was like, I guess he stole like some recipe or food or something. So I wasn't even sure what was really going on at that point. But I know you're like in this big like soup pot basically, trying to fight this bird at the end of that level. But finally got through that. Took me actually I think a few turns, which is kind of sad for me since I grew up on Mario. But finally got through that, and like I said, I got to the Bowser level. I'm hopefully going to finish that off in the coming week. It was just something like I was looking for something to play like single player. I was on vacation, like I wasn't gonna have a whole lot of time, but mostly just like in the car ride. I want to kind of I usually like try to jump into like a single player game, so I figured I'd go back into that. I think most of the Mario games, I don't think I've ever deleted off my Switch, so it was on there. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna kind of jump through this and get through it again. But I had a lot of fun. I still think it's one of the probably the better, if not the best Mario Mario games out there, at least 3D. I know it's a big statement, but I do like the switch between like the 2D, like the 2D section when you kind of jump into those warp pipes and you go back to the traditional 2D Mario gameplay. I just always thought that was kind of cool. So I have a lot of fun with that, and like I said, hopefully I'll be able to beat that in this coming week. That's pretty much it for that. Like I said, I didn't get a whole lot of time on that game. Once I finally got going, we're kind of to our destination. So I didn't really play it too much. I didn't play it at all actually afterwards. And I was on the ride home. I was just kind of spacing out because how it is after like a vacation. It's just like you're kind of like done with everything. So I didn't get a chance to play it on the way home. But hopefully I'll get through it and I'll be done maybe with my first game. I'll beat my first game this year potentially. So it's been a while. Any questions or comments on that one? No? All right. Let's jump into our main news headlines. Game Logic, you're first up with some Skyrim shenanigans on the mods going on there.
Well, I would say it's necessarily Skyrim shenanigans, but more just mod community shenanigans, as well as I guess I'm going to put Peanut Butter a little bit of this blame on the publisher and the developer as well. So this story over on Twinfinite by Gabriella Jessica. Voice actors speak out against Skyrim, not safe for work mods using deepfake AI. Unless you've been living under a rock, you may already be aware of the surge of AI-generated content plaguing the internet. This time, numerous voice actors have expressed their dissatisfaction over the use of their voices in Skyrim, not safe for work mods. Earlier this week, Twitter user Robbie92 posted an image featuring a list of voice actors whose voices had been dumped into AI voice generator machines. The user argued the modding community has been abusing voice actors by creating and distributing non-consensual deepfake pornographic content via AI voice cloning. So this is like kind of folding the space-time continuum, right? Like this is multiple levels of bad and horrific. Obviously, the utilization of AI has lots of problems. And this is one of the things, actually, I think Brap and I were talking about. I tend to kind of align with the thoughts and philosophy of Tom Merritt. And I don't know how many people know Tom Merritt, but he's a podcaster, journalist who used to work for CNET, worked with Molly Wood, was part of the original Buzz Out Loud crowd, then went to the Twit network and is now doing his own thing over on Daily Tech News. But one of the things he's expressed is, we're doing a lot of these things, and Elon Musk is stirring the pot, and yada yada, and we have all these PhDs like falling out of the woodwork talking about the dangers of AI in kind of these far-flung, futuristic scenarios that are hundreds of years down the road, right? As I saw an advertisement for, I guess, some new movie that's coming out with this guy's, rescuing this child AI in this war between the humans and AI. Look, I get it; those scenarios exist. But this is a case in point of we have AI problems right now, today, right? We have scenarios where people could use, voice AI to try and take advantage of an elderly person, right? By impersonating a child, right? Who's contacting the parent asking for money. We have problems with the way AI can be exploited right now, today, that require policing, enforcement, regulation, intervention, right? Rather than us worrying about, which of the big five tech companies are going to potentially build Skyrim and how to build time travel so we can prevent it from ever happening in the first place, right? So, this is a great point. And over on the Brap Show, we have Ramon Terrell, who's actually a voice actor in the industry, who also, mentioned responded to my tweet when I kind of tried to raise this up. But the issue is that, modders are going in, Skyrim modders are going in, grabbing voice assets from the game, turning them not only into works that the voice actors haven't consented to, but then taking their voices and actually, representing them in entirely inappropriate ways, in ways that I'm sure that they don't agree with. So, here lies the issue. And, we're all peanut butter a little bit of, and this is, it's similar to, we have this kind of in World of Warships, not this situation, but there are layers, right, to the publisher and the mod community. and this is one in which I think this is a mod aggregator. So it's basically an app that allows application of multiple mods and kind of console, dashboard or console level administration of these mods and their implementation in Skyrim. And so that middle project, and a lot of these are often like kind of open source, like community driven type of structures. So Nexus Mods is a place that allows mod content that where there is AI generated content. And I think DBQ we talked about, where there's AI problems in terms of what policy Valve is going to put in place. So, so there's the publisher, there's Nexus Mods, and then there are the modders themselves. And so you have these multiple layers where, some type of bureaucratic structure that doesn't exist is not taking action, right? So this is part of the problem. And Bethesda and Microsoft and Xbox haven't, responded to this yet either. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. It's unfortunate that, these types of bad actors. Look, we're just over the halfway point of the year. I have multiple candidates for the wretched hive of scum and villainy awardees for gaming superlatives at the end of the year, and this is one of them.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a jam-packed superlative show this year. They mentioned in article 2 the Nexus Mods, how they allow AI generated mod content to exist, and the company stated that AI generated mod content is not against the rules, but may be removed if we receive a credible complaint from an affected creator or rights holder. I mean, I know it's kind of hard for them. Like, I mean, they'd have to basically go through every mod and even figure out that's what they would have to do. I mean, realistically, is just check every mod for anything like that, which I guess is gonna be kind of hard because I mean, you'd have to have a whole index of what actors are out there, I suppose, and just all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's just gonna be, I think, hard to I shouldn't say hard. I don't even know how to say this, but I want to say it's going to be hard to kind of police this, but I guess in other ways. I mean, it's obviously, it's going to be obvious if it's somebody, if it's a famous actor or something, but obviously some of these other voice actors, they kind of get the short end of the stick when it comes to stuff like this. But I mean, it's just all in all, it's just it's a terrible situation. And especially, in this article where they're talking about, the adult content that it's being used for. It's come on, guys. The one person's come on, what's going on here? Why would you even do that? But unfortunately, there's people out there like that are going to, do this kind of stuff. So we'll just have to see what happens. DB, any comments?
No, I think Game Logic's point of kind of the challenges of it, and from both a creative and a cultural perspective, will continue to be an issue. And as you said, trying to police it's going to be difficult because it's easy enough to keep you squash one and another one is going to pop up. But in some ways, the onus is also on us as gamers of not supporting these types of things as well. And so there's a lot of question marks in terms of some of how this comes out, in terms of not only the improper use, but even potentially, use within the bounds of game development and what that means in terms of game design, game developers, and workers there as well.
So one thing in the chat, Slobo mentions Nexus Mods is usually great. So this is a bad situation, which, like you mentioned, Tao, right? The mechanisms aren't in place, and then whatever it's done about it is going to be difficult, right? And so, my comment shouldn't be taken as Nexus Mods is a bad outfit, and but it's a thing that's going on in the backyards of multiple people, and like I said, the structure doesn't exist to contend with it, and so hopefully somebody will figure out that someone needs to do something about it. This doesn't become the dog poop on the soccer field. Yeah,
and Paul's Gaming Live also commented, as long as the mod's not being sold, I don't have a massive issue with it. I mean, it can't be classed as a crime, right? I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, Nexus Mod isn't, you're just going down there to get free mods. So, but I mean, I'm sure there's other places where, you gotta, you'll pay for them somewhere or at some point in the future, we'll probably see stuff like that, or sites like that where you gotta to pay for it. So I don't know.
Yeah, and where I get concerned about stuff like this is, right, as we're going to talk about like the FTC merger tonight, I think whether something actively gets done about it or not is an issue, right, for further down the road, right? The first thing is just the thought process that goes around. I feel like we as a gaming community, as consumers, need to be aware when there are things going on that disincentivize people from being creators, right? When we see toxic behavior out in social media, when we see like the crazy fans, I'm not going to refer to them as gamers because they're not gamers, but like the crazy fans who issue death threats, right, to developers. This is the type of behavior that's going to make, and like I said, we're going to get onto the FTC trial, right, and talk about it. But I interview, dozens, hundreds of software developers, right, every year, and hire new ones, and we always have this conversation of what do you think I should be looking at, and for software developers right now, I have multiple red flags and warning signals for considering going down the path of being a game developer, right? This is the type of situation where, right, it's gonna cause people to second guess and consider maybe voice acting in the video game industry is not what I want to do, right? But that's just something to consider and determine, how you want to kind of orient yourself with that.
Yeah, Game Logic, your point of kind of the feedback and harassment from the industry or misuse of things. We don't have the story in our news rundown this week, but also you have the $500,000 damages from Bungie around the harassment of a community manager. So yeah, that this is an issue on multiple fronts in terms of how we interact with each other and those that create our hobby and our passions.
Well, and you also have like the Genshin Impact voice actors, right, who haven't been paid. So,
yep.
So Slow-Mo mentions, I know Hampa was just saying Nexus Mods is usually a good spot. Yeah, I want to be careful. Slow-Mo, I was not saying that you were saying that I was saying Nexus Mods was crap. I was clarifying my own comment for the benefit of listeners so that they didn't construe it as such. But I know you weren't trying to hang that anchor around my neck. Paul's Gaming Live says, someone putting Thomas the Tank Engine into Skyrim, should that be an issue? It's copyrighted content. Yeah, Paul, there's levels. And to be quite honest, around some of these things like this, I will agree that I'm kind of a purist. Like, I don't think it's cool to take copyrighted content and that other creators have made and use it for mods and put it into games. Other people are more lenient about that. I'm personally not. But this is not a matter of me being an uber prude, I don't think. I think this is a matter of something that is kind of toxically and caustically bad for creators that make things that we want to that we love. And hopefully, like I said, somebody will do something about it.
Well, I think in your case too, you're in software, like you're in that kind of environment, and like you wouldn't want to see something like you made, being, messed with. So, I can understand that. That's, we all have our different, opinions, but I think in your case, that's it's kind of a special thing too, because of the work you're in.
If somebody took something that I made and messed with it, there would be ramifications much more serious than than pornographic content being created.
and just for like thinking about the future too, is like, as you see this stuff happening, like, and I know there's ways around it, but these games could just get totally locked down, like in the future, like you won't be able to do anything at all, like going forward. So there's ways around. Like I said, there's ways around it, but sometimes it's kind of complicated, and you might break something, but there's always people who can do that stuff. But for the average Joe, like these kind of sites and these kind of things, it's kind of nice. Like even Bethesda has their own little portal that you can pull stuff down from. Even on the console version. Obviously that's heavily looked at. At least I'm assuming it is. I've never really tried any of the console stuff too much, but there's always that fear that in the future we'll see that just games totally get locked down. So we just gotta people gotta think about what they're doing.
So one other comment from Slow-Mo before we move on to the next topic. I remember someone took Thomas the Tank Engine and made him Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 remake, pretty hilarious, but I'm sure the owners of the IP didn't find it funny. Paul's Gaming mentions cloud gaming wouldn't lock a game down. No one would ever have access to the files. Yeah, okay.
All right, so let's jump into our next news story, which I believe is yours also, Game Logic, about Sega of America.
So, sorry, I'm finding my cursor. This story over on Engadget by Chris Holt. Sega of America workers overwhelmingly vote to unionize. Workers at Sega of America have voted to unionize in a union representation election with the National Labor Relations Board. The workers voted 91 to 26 in favor of their unit, which is called the Allied Employees Guild Improving Sega, or Aegis-CWA. 19 ballots were challenged, while 3 were void. As a result, the group is now officially organized with the Communications Workers of America. So, my commentary on this that I've been making about unions, like, I feel like what people should be aware of is there is sometimes this sense or this feeling that, like, everyone in the gaming industry wants to unionize. I don't believe that that's the case, because your highly paid, highly valued talent is incentivized to not unionize. Your talent that is lower on the pay scale and endures challenges with regards to benefits and other things likely view themselves as benefiting from collective bargaining. But in my opinion, we should be aware of the tension between these two different disparate camps in the workforce. And when you look at something like this, where, the departments that unionize, brand marketing, games as a service, which I interpret based on this layout that these are people in the more like site reliability engineering, DevOps kind of area, not traditional development, localization, which again isn't your development talent who's working out physics models of bullet impacts and things like that. Marketing services, product development, sales, and quality assurance teams. Again, my read on this listing of departments is these are people on the lower ends of the pay scales who aren't as who don't benefit as much from pay and other benefits in the industry. So it's 200 people. The largest actually is ZeniMax, which has about 300 quality assurance workers at ZeniMax Studios who unionized. While this got through, the accusations from the workers is that on the roadway to get here, management was participating in union busting activities, much the same as we saw at Activision, attempting to spread misinformation, fear and division is the quote. So, it got through. The NLRB is taking a look at it. What's going to be interesting is, and we have, what's going on with SAG-AFTRA right now. What's going to be super interesting, and DBQ, maybe or Tao, better. My impression and my understanding of Hollywood unions is that everyone is unionized, right? It's like the actors are unionized, the gaffers are unionized, the boom mic operator is unionized, right? The camera guys are unionized. Writers are unionized. Everyone's unionized.
Yeah,
right?
You pretty much get out of the director-producer roles, and there's a union for most everything.
Right, and even those directors and producers are even unionized. So they may not all be parts of the same union, but that ethos pervades the industry. The gaming industry is not careening in that direction right now. The gaming industry is careening towards, like I mentioned, you're going to have high-end talent workers who potentially don't unionize and other workers who do. And I should say they're all talented, right? But my point is people who command higher salaries and higher benefits versus talent that doesn't in the industry right now. And again, that's going to create a unique tension where, while there may be benefits from unionization, there are going to be some negatives from that type of tension as well. And so it's going to kind of be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Just real quick, Slomo had to take off, so he says, "Got to run. Great show, guys. Take care." Thanks, Slomo, for stopping by. DB, any comments on this one?
No, I think it'll be. I mean, I think it's not a bad thing that this happened, right? It is support of those workers, and that's positive. But to your point, Game Logic, right? This is not the kind of showpiece of game development unionization. This is just because it's under Sega doesn't necessarily mean that it's in that same vein of game design and game development.
No, we keep seeing these reports coming out, or these news stories about the unionization. Like you said, these kind of lower, I won't say lower tier, but lower on the pay scale and workforce. Do you see this as a stepping stone for like the higher ups, or not? I shouldn't say higher ups, not like C levels or anything, but like the actual developers and stuff starting to do this kind of thing more often.
My 2 cents is no. My personality, and I look at a lot of these guys as like my peers, right? Guys and girls. The way I personally look at it is, if you came to me to talk about unionization in the tech industry, what I would tell you is, I've done the math, and my projection is that me in joining in collective bargaining decreases the total earning potential across my career lifetime. And so I'm not interested. Because what collective bargaining does is it smooths the valleys, but it also smooths the peaks. And so I would look at it as, I don't make out as well over my lifetime by been joining in collective bargaining. And what does that mean for me as an individual? It means I don't have as much money to put towards my kids going to school. I don't have as much money for me to put towards I don't have as much money for me. So and this is where, to me, like, this comes, like, decisions of this nature become intensely personal, and like, for me, a lot of times they come down to, there are things that I want to do and that I don't want to do, but what's, at the end of the day, how does it impact me and the people, right, I take care of? So I don't think this is going to bleed into the higher end pay scales and ranks, because they're going to see it as a negative.
All right, let's jump into our next news story real quick. Actually, before that, Newtonian jumped into the comments. He says, "What up, guys? What's going on, Newtonian? We got some Need for Speed Most Wanted remake possibly coming out."
Yeah, and I'll cover this in much less detail. So the one thing I will say is, it's surprising how many of these news stories I was just talking about. Like, in the last couple of weeks, I was also talking about yet another 2005 game, Need for Speed Most Wanted. My contention is, while there are 2 games that go by that title, only one of them is real, the other one's an imposter. We've talked numerous times about the 2012 Need for Speed Criterion version. This is the 2005 version by, I think, Black Box, who was EA Canada, basically. But this, I just looked up the town that this takes place in. Rockport, I think, is the town. To me, it was really one of those Need for Speed titles that, we talked about this when we talked about Need for Speed Heat a few months ago, I think, DBQ. It's one of the games that particularly harkened to an essential element to me for any Need for Speed title, which is that the city was essentially one of the characters in the story. And that's what's ingrained in my mind. So at any rate, this is, again, another voice actor. Lots of serendipity in this episode. This is yet another voice actor who dropped the release date, which is incidentally where we originally got the projected release date for Spider-Man 2, was because of Tony Todd mentioning it, which is funny because I just saw him as I'm watching the Final Destination series now. One of the voice actors from the original 2005 mentioned a tweet, which they've now since deleted, indicating that they were in the studio actively participating in, I guess, recording sessions, because what they tweeted out was Need for Speed Most Wanted Remake is being released in 2024. So there we go. If this thing comes out, I'm going to be seated for it. Need for Speed Unbound, not quite a perfect resurgence of the Need for Speed IP, and all the philosophical driftings that go around it, but very much kind of pointed in the right direction. Any notion that we're going to see a slow build up, getting back to what the Need for Speed franchise has historically been, I'm there for it. No matter how many speed bumps there are along the way.
Nice. Yeah, it's been a long time since I played Need for Speed, like a long time. So this might be one to maybe check out once it finally does come out, if it finally comes out, because you never know, since this is rumors, but seems to be legit. If you want to jump into the next story from about Star Wars Outlaws, real quick.
Okay, this story over on Dual Shockers by Jose Garcia. Don't expect Starfield level freedom in Star Wars Outlaws. One of the more exciting announcements of the recent Summer Game Fest season was the reveal of Ubisoft's upcoming open world, or perhaps open galaxy Star Wars game, Star Wars Outlaws. And a recent interview in the latest issue of Edge magazine detailed a lot more info about the game, including some restrictive aspects of its space exploration. So, big takeaway from this. On one hand, there's an attempt to tamp down some expectations, right? What the creative director was saying is that don't expect to go to a table with a huge star chart and kind of pick which planet you want to go to out of thousands like you have in Starfield, right? And go out like it's gonna be story driven. You're gonna be funneled. You're gonna be told kind of where you need to go. You may have some options to pick. Either in this instance you could pick either go to planet A or planet B. But you're not going to have this wide open ability to kind of go anywhere you want at any point in the story. What I worry is I worry that people see that and they disregard what they saw in the demo. So the loss of space exploration in a Star Wars game, specifically in that licensed IP, I'm okay with, given that I can participate in star battles, because that's what I really care about, shooting TIE fighters. So in that we saw in the demo, and so my belief, as far as I understand, is that's going to be in the game. So I don't really care if you tell me I have to go to a planet. If I can go to that planet's atmosphere and shoot a bunch of starfighters before I go down and land at a specific designated point, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm not. Do people believe that? Like, I don't know why he had to come out and say that, really.
Well, because remember, lots of gamers don't read stories. They read headlines.
Okay.
I thought you were just going to say, remember, it's the internet, right?
I guess I forget sometimes, I guess. I'm getting old, so. And, we're a different breed, I guess, on the show. Because we actually, delve into things instead of just, flipping through stuff. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I don't know, maybe at some point that'll be like the new thing is like open universe. But I mean, this was, I think, just like 3 or 4 years in the making as far as this game was going. So I don't think you're going to get that kind of openness in a game like that anyways. But like I said, it's just a little different. So, all right, DB. Give us a tale here about Blizzard, Activision, Microsoft.
We're going to cram a whole bunch of Microsoft stories into this one here. Obviously, this past week, we had the ruling of the California judge around the FTC versus Microsoft in terms of slowing down the merger. And that ruling was denied. Then you had some, then you get a little bit of some appeals, and the appeals have also been denied. You also have a lot has happened, right? Because the deadline here is the 18th in order for kind of the initial deadline that if it's not closed by then, the parties have the ability to walk away, but also have kind of a payment, a retreat clause payment that's built in there. And so those toward the end of the week, those appeals were denied and no longer pursued from the FTC level. You have news coming out of the UK that the CMA is pausing, or that Microsoft is pausing the appeal there in order to try to work out some things that, again, does not prevent the deal to go through. Theirs was really about at the CMA level, it was very much ruled because of cloud gaming. And so what types of structures will have to be done in the UK in order to make that possible. Then over the weekend, you get the announcement that there is now a binding deal, not just a raising your hand in court and the court of public opinion on social media between Microsoft and PlayStation around Call of Duty, keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years. I think, and then today you have some additional stories of just in the last couple hours that Microsoft is in talks with Activision in terms of extending the deal. That just because it doesn't close on the 18th doesn't mean that the additional payments suddenly come into effect. What it means is that the parties have the ability to walk away or to renegotiate. And so Microsoft at this point, this is out of Reuters as of about an hour ago, that they are Microsoft and Activision are working on coming to terms about extending the deal with the expectation that everything is moving forward after this past week of rulings and kind of basically the roadblocks that have been up, whether it was the FTC or whether it was Sony's work, whether it's at the FTC level or at the UK CMA level, in terms of advocating for this to not go through. Even at the Sony level, they're seeing the writing on the wall to the degree that they're going to sign a deal that confirms Call of Duty. Some of the language in there is interesting because it really just confirms Call of Duty and not a whole lot of anything else. So it keeps that door open in terms of what may stay exclusive, as we heard throughout the testimonies and releases of information from the FTC trial related to what may or may not stay. The surprise of Bethesda when there were conversations around that Call of Duty would not be exclusive. So yes, a lot has been going on, but it all seems to point to that the 18-month process of this merger is potentially coming to a close as the deal is looking to be finalized. So that's a quick rundown on the news statements there. There's a couple other pieces in here, right? That's but I think a lot of it related to the rulings and the merger. There's so many layers here, from like a legal corporate aspect in terms of how the FTC went about it, in terms of that it's not necessarily, FTC just by losing this does not necessarily lose teeth. This is the first big challenge that they've done in a while. It also is interesting from all the other pieces that came out through the process of Jim Ryan's emails and the poorly redacted aspects and how much things cost. And in some ways, the hinging on this is where I step off of the reporting aspect and onto the soapbox, right? And the FTC end, the hinging on Call of Duty being the real crux, rather than in the UK level looking further ahead and looking at cloud gaming as a potential crux here. Again, I've said on this podcast for a while, like, whether this is good or bad, I think the way that PlayStation has approached it hasn't necessarily been genuine. I think potentially, given what we talked about in our, again, nice callbacks to our wretched hive of scum and villainy in terms of all the Activision Blizzard management and lawsuits there, that potentially this has the ability of improving conditions there. As you talked about Game Logic, that Bethesda has their Q&A people unionized, so potentially Microsoft, at least in some capacity, has a little more non-union busting practices than Activision Blizzard has demonstrated as well. So that is the news. I don't know that there's all kinds of angles in terms of analysis here, but I think it may have gotten to the same point that it was always going to get to, but in some ways I feel like the beleaguered process has been beneficial in terms of kind of getting more information out there than we previously had from a game development big studio perspective.
So, Game Logic, if you have any comments, and then also you have a Blizzard story also that will kind of like dovetail into this whole conversation.
No, it's just kind of a funny aside. It's, at the beginning of the week, Mike Ibarra, who's slipped onto my not non-favored nation status list throughout this, mentioned there was a rumor running around that Diablo IV was going to go into Game Pass, and this is before Judge Crowley had issued her decision, and he put out a tweet that said that is absolutely not happening, and then when Corley issued her ruling, and then the appeals got denied. As far as I can tell, I think he deleted his tweet, because at this point, obviously, that's not his call. As we saw via in the testimony, that at least that much is a Phil Spencer level call of what goes exclusive and what doesn't, and what goes into Game Pass. So yeah.
Yeah, man, it just seems like it's been more than 18 months. This whole thing's been going on, even though that's the only time period that's actually passed. But I don't know. It all kind of seems like a TV movie playing out. Like you have these ups and downs, and then like the big decision at the end with the judge, and you finally got pretty much the go ahead, at least in the U.S. For it going through. It's obviously the appeals were overturned, so that's more likely. There's really nothing else the FTC can do, right? I mean, once the appeals are pretty much denied, as far as I know, I guess.
At this stage in the game, I don't think that's the case.
I think there is more that they can do. Whether they continue to pursue appeals up to a higher court, they certainly could. It's harder to have a precedent there when you've had lower courts not hear those appeals, unless something would change structurally within the agreement or within the landscape of the industry that would give them another angle. I mean, and they've said, the FTC has said from the beginning, like, it is possible to come back at this later on once the deal has happened. It makes unwinding it is a whole lot more complicated and challenging than it is to slow it down, stop it, or delay it.
Yeah, and procedurally, I'm not even sure if those are their only recourses. And let me first say, the reporting on this has been horrible, absolutely horrible by 99% of most journalists. But I have seen corroboration in some journalistic reports that coincide with the research that I went back and did. And as far as I understand, so first of all, the case was not a decision on the merger. The case was the hearing was for the preliminary injunction, which was to prevent them from consummating the deal before the administrative hearing at the FTC in August, which, as far as I can tell from all research and with some corroboration of journalists, is still on the table. It is up to the FTC to decide that, based on the decision on the preliminary injunction, that they are not going to pursue the administrative hearing. If that is the case, then it goes to the administrative hearing. Again, that administrative law judge, same thing, is going to see what the amount of evidence is from this hearing, and it's going to make their call. But they're going to make it with the awareness that, obviously, if they rule in favor of the FTC, Microsoft is going to appeal it. It's going to go to a federal court. I'm not clear in that case if it goes directly to an appeals court or a lower circuit court, but either way, those judges are certainly going to look at Corley's decision and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision to not hear the appeal. So, I mean, that's where we are. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, at this case, what we're waiting to see the next shoe drop is both, what are Microsoft and Activision going to do? They're obviously going to move forward. I think that we've seen every saber rattling and telegraphing of their intention to do so. And then what is the FTC going to do in response to that?
Yeah, and I know, I think tomorrow was the deadline, right? For the actual.
Yeah, tomorrow's the first deadline. I mean, but again, as the Reuters story was reporting, it doesn't necessarily kill the deal. It just allows both parties to renegotiate or to back out with some financial penalties. So, And the one thing I want to clarify on that, because I think that's also there's been a ton of confusion about that. Like that is a corporate deadline between Microsoft and Activision. It has absolutely no legal bearing within the judicial system whatsoever.
Right.
And Cory Doctorow, who's a well-respected journalist and podcaster, but who covers things like this, also, mentioned just kind of what that type of the dynamic of whether the judicial system pays attention to that and kind of what that telegraphs, right, to how other cases like this are structured. I mean, because clearly what is happening, what has been happening all along, but was clearly happening now is at Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, and Apple, the four of them are having deep strategic discussions about what acquisitions they should be hiring. So what acquisitions they should be targeting. And first of all, M&A activities are a regularly scheduled, recurring round of discussions that happen every year in terms of strategic management at corporations of this scale. There's a portfolio of targets. They're constantly being groomed. They're constantly they're constantly doing due diligence. Every year they make a decision on which ones they're going to pull the trigger on. And so this case has bearing on that. And in the case where there appears that the judicial system paid attention to that corporate deadline, I mean, Cory Doctorow wrote a lot of contrivance, right, scenarios where, hey, well, what I'll do is I'll just put my merger in and I'll also put a super tight deadline on it, right, to kind of drive the point home that, you all need to get your stuff together and make these decisions, before I hit my deadline. I don't know that it's going to be that, but I mean, it's definitely going to be a mechanism, right? I'm not saying that I agree with Doctorow that they're going to put it, hey, I'm going to submit this thing and put a 2-month deadline on it. They're going to put a realistic deadlines on it, but they're definitely going to utilize that as a point that they're going to point to, right, as these proceedings unfold, given the precedent that's being set.
No, that's right. The judge had the ability to. There was no requirement of the judge to rule as quickly as she did, and even in the ruling to name out the deadline, the looming deadline there, right? The awareness of this and the responsiveness to it shows a willingness. I mean, it's in some ways it shows some corporate support or favor, at least in keeping those factors, calculating those factors. But at the same time, this goes back to the quote unquote loss from the FTC, like having it go through this type of airing is also potentially what the FTC wants, right? Like, it is not necessarily that the result is that the merger does not go through, but forcing a company to justify and spell out and come to, something like the binding PlayStation Call of Duty piece means that, as you were talking about Game Logic, right? For Amazon, Alphabet, Apple, Facebook, Meta, right? Like the need to then drag all that through a public court and a public hearing is another factor in terms of how you approach a merger as well.
Well, and it actually, I mean, could be a deterring force as well, right?
Yes. I think so. I mean, I think that is exactly what it has the potential to be, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of bad press and time frame and things like that. Like,
and the release of trade secrets, right?
Exactly.
Deep insight into financials, et cetera.
Yep.
I mean, my personal feeling on this is I think that this is a bad for consumers. I think the way this thing maps out over time, you go back and look at some of the big mergers that have been approved, AOL, Time Warner, 182 billion, Comcast and AT&T Broadband, 72 billion, Pfizer and Wyeth, 68 billion, AT&T and Bell South, 67 billion. And one of the justifications or complaints that I've heard during this time is, hey, the FTC should be concentrating on, big health and telecoms. And I'm like, okay, guys, they did. And these mergers were allowed to go through. And I would be amazed, and I would have to maybe say someone was being disingenuous if they sat here and told me, not this panel, but, and somebody told me, I'm happy with my cell phone bill. I'm happy with my ISP, and we brought up examples of like the radio industry and not the radio, but the record industry and how we've allowed mass consolidation there. So, you only have 3 record labels, right, that really drive and control what the record industry is. So I think there are some net bads when you look at these things and kind of where they map out over, 10 years, that there are arguable goods on the front end, which is, people will have access to some more content in Game Pass. But I also think that dynamic is a bit dangerous, right, within our industry, is we look at, whether or not gaming properties are arguably being devalued, as I see people who actually criticize game developers who don't put their games in Game Pass. Oh, that's a miss. You decided not to put your game in Game Pass. Have fun trying to sell your game. And as we watch the industry and we watch metrics, and I already talk about the fact of like you look at the numbers for indies and you see that they're not being bought at a high enough level, and you see that is a negative when you look at 65% of the revenue going to the top 10 publishers in the industry, and how does that balance things out? I just at the end of the day, I feel like consolidating power, bargaining power within the barter exchange system with a supplier that is at the scale of a multi-trillion-dollar company and one of the big five, where we are in this kind of tipping point of trade and commerce at a global level, where these five companies wield an extreme amount of power in radically different ways than Exxon did, or Mobil did, or even Comcast and Verizon did. I think it drives, some significantly bad dynamics potentially. But we'll have to see how it unfolds from here, and I guess get on with our lives.
I appreciate your soapbox, right? Because I have been on this show saying, like, I don't know that it's a bad thing. Like, in the long run, I agree, right? Like, it has the potential to be anti-consumer in terms of the consolidation aspects. I think but that hasn't been the conversation, right? Like, outside, and I think in some ways, like, I think the CMA was probably the most kind of had the most foresight in terms of thinking about what does 10 years in the marketplace look like, who has an infrastructure in terms of a server infrastructure to be able to support cloud gaming, when there's been shown that even at a Google level, it's not a sustainable piece. And Microsoft is one of the few places that probably has that support infrastructure. I think all the work and press from PlayStation and Sony around this feels more of a competitor, trying to drum up other issues to stop this, where at a consumer level, what you were talking about, Game Logic, hasn't really been pulled out at the FTC level. And there was a little bit toward the very end of their closing arguments where they talked about this in the longer sense, but so much of it was focused in on the here and now, rather than what this does for the competitive landscape of an industry. So,
well, yeah, I mean, the missteps in this case, I personally feel, what the FTC built their case around were not the tenets that I would have personally argued on. They would have been, I would have argued on what happens when one of the big five skates into a space of innovation first. And I would have tied that to look at what Microsoft is doing now with AI, where they have grabbed a significant stake in ChatGPT, tethered it to Bing, which is a market adjacency to theirs, are now putting out licenses, pushing on licensing clauses that they have with Bing to prevent people from utilizing Bing and the data that they sell for it for the training of AI models. Like that is representative of a thing that I think is a warning sign for a company that has essential building blocks, 23 studios, a live active gaming subscription service now, a live cloud game streaming service now, and the Azure-backed infrastructure, right, as one of the two largest. Like, that is the case that I would have built around that. I would have built a case around, let's look at the behavioral patterns of Microsoft over the last 21 years, even since the DOJ antitrust settlement of 2001. Like, they have continued to exhibit behaviors where they have used arguably anti-competitive behaviors in certain markets, raising prices for customers within the European Union who purchased Office, but wouldn't host it on Azure workloads. Like, that's the second piece that I would have built it around. And then there are a few others. Like, I mean, the FTC did what they did, but from a evaluation of the technical space and the business space, I don't know that I'm pretty certain. I'm absolutely certain. I'm gonna assert I am perfectly convinced that their technologists in residence that they have, which are like 5 or 6, high-end technology, like, don't understand the gaming industry and don't understand the technology and don't understand the past history. And that there are other pieces of the technology industry that they don't understand as well. So, I mean, but, like I said, here we are, and, the FTC didn't do what they needed to do, so we'll just see, where it unfolds from here.
Well, I don't know that the FTC didn't do what it needed to do, right? I think it was also pulling something uphill in a legal structure that for over 2 decades has been structured around the agreement of these mergers, right? Like, as a judge, if you're pointing to other past practices, there's a lot more precedence of allowing these to go through. No matter what you just pointed out, like, they may end up pretty bad, but from a legal perspective, we've already said yes to some things, and so it gives us that perspective. Like, the FTC is, by even starting this, is working against the current that has existed, and hopefully they continue to try to swim against that current to raise these questions that you just brought up.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll mention is, again, there are byproducts of this that may prove over time to have been a successful vector, right? Like, over the last 2 Congresses, even with Republican controlled, houses in a Senate, there has been the introduction of a lot more antitrust, anti-competition, legislative proposals than we've seen in the past. Now, none of them have made it out of committee to take effect, but there have been bills that have been proposed by both Democrats and Republicans to kind of tamp some of this stuff down and to pull back a lot of the power that these companies have. So, this may be a thing where, the FTC is able to successfully go back to Congress and say, hey, we asked you guys for more teeth. We didn't get more teeth. Here's where we are. I know some of you agreed to let Microsoft go through with this, but oh, by the way, there's also negatives, right, and things that you guys don't want to have happen that happen, right, when these companies are allowed to do these big mega mergers.
All right, there's a lot to unpack there. For the sake of time, we're just gonna kind of move forward here. So let's jump into our round robin game experience. Game Logic, you're continuing playing Diablo 4.
Yeah, so I've spent a chunk more time in that on PlayStation 5. I haven't gone back to PC, so I've been playing my Necromancer. I've knocked off, 2 or 3 more bosses. Getting interested in the story more and more, but again, this is one of those games that for me, I'm fine with it being a slow jog and kind of, picking apart pieces of it and, spending some time doing some of the side stuff. I don't necessarily feel the need to mainline through it. So, or to rush to complete this before, season 1 goes live. If I have to wait till season 2, I'm fine with that. So, having a good time with it. Not super crazy about having to use a game controller to play it, but, it is what it is. I'm sure I'll eventually get back to my Barbarian on PC at some point as well. What's weird is I have made much more story progress with my Necromancer, but he is still not at the same level as my Barbarian. My Barbarian has gotten through less of the story and is still 1 level ahead. So I don't know what I did or what I've done or what it is. Maybe there's something in the progression curve of the Barbarian class that gets them to advance faster than Necros. I don't know, but I'm picking up some more interesting powers. Can now create not just one type of zombie but multiple types of zombies and yeah. So it's Diablo fun as it has always been.
Nice. And for myself, like I said, I didn't really play it too much, but I did download a couple of mobile games from Netflix games, which I always forget about. So if you have Netflix account, you can go into the mobile app or even just the Play Store. I'm on Google Pixel, and you can just look up Netflix, and it has a whole bunch of games that you can download for free. And I downloaded Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. It's kind of puzzle, not a match 3, but it's more of I can't remember one of the games. It's more like you kind of just, as long as they're like a certain like more than I think 2 or 3 items or creatures on the screen. If you click on them or battle them, all you have to do is like hit it a couple times, and it kind of clears that section or clears however many of the thing you have. So that kind of gameplay. I played through the tutorial, and I started playing just through the regular campaign, I guess you want to call it, single player campaign. And I hit a place where I just kept dying. Like, I don't know why. Like, at first I thought it was because stuff was like dropping on me, because stuff falls from the top, to the bottom. And I thought I was just, because I'm getting crushed, or, an enemy's hitting me. But then, like, I was, purposely avoiding everything and making sure I didn't get hit or anything. And I just kept dying. So I'm like, what is going on? So I came off of that for now. And then I went to Bloons TD6, which is a tower defense game. It's been out for actually quite a while. I guess on mobile, I think 2018 was when it was originally released on mobile. And, it's just like, you have like a little track on the screen or on the map you're on. And the balloons kind of, go across, and you got to pop them. Pretty simple gameplay. I've seen a lot of people playing it, though, and a lot of people talking on some of the other Discord servers I'm on. I was like, all right, I'll give it a try, since, it's on, Netflix games. So it's pretty fun. I'm on the very first world so far. And there's like different difficulty levels you can do for each world. So I just did, I think I finished the easy. I'm on the medium setting now. So I'm going through that. And you have the different monkeys that you can, the monkey characters and the different classes that you can, throw down on the map to pop the balloons. So like I have an archer, and then like just a guy who does like one little, like basically looks like a dart. You can freeze the balloons so they they stay in place, and you can hit them more, and just all other kind of different classes that they have. So I'm doing that right now. I have pretty good time with it. Played, I think, other games like that maybe in the past, but I can't remember any of the not mobile games, but on console. But I can't think of any. It's been so long since I played anything like that. But having a good time with that.
Yeah, that's a very classic kind of tower defense game. And
yeah.
For some reason, it must be getting some social media traction somewhere, because I've seen my kids pick it back up after not playing it for 6 to 8 years, right? Like, so somewhere it's hitting, like you said, in the Discord servers of different groups and things.
Yeah, it was weird, because it just always, like, I think I've heard of it before, and I never thought of it, and I didn't even know what it was, to be honest with you, until I started seeing it on the servers. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. But I didn't realize it was tower defense. I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. So I always like to try new things. So
Netflix games this week had Oxenfree 2 was a release, which came out on consoles. Oxenfree, the original, came out 2016. The studio was purchased by Netflix, and so now it's free in the Netflix app as well.
Nice. Yeah, I like I said, I totally forgot I got that, and then I actually just got like a 3-month the Play Store. I don't want to say Game Pass, but whatever, their Play Pass or whatever it's called on their like a 3-month trial. So I want to try to see some of their games to try those out. Kind of been on a mobile kick lately, trying out different things. So that'll probably be as far as my what's up next gameplay. I'll probably continue with Bloons, excuse me, and then also I want to jump back into Diablo 4 and probably download some other mobile games. Game Logic, what's up next for you in the coming week?
I'm going to be hitting up Gran Turismo 7 probably on PlayStation 5. I mentioned that I was probably going to go ahead and order another steering stand for my PlayStation wheel and pedals, so I don't have to like swap it out of the current steering stand that I have for the Xbox wheel and pedals. But that's my next target. I did want to ask DBQ, what platform have you been playing MLB The Show on?
PlayStation 5. But I've been. Go ahead.
So you've been at this point now you've played it on all 3 platforms? I can't remember if you played it on Nintendo Switch.
No, I'm playing MLB The Show 17. I'm going all the way back. Yes. So yeah, I mean, I have played it on. I played the trial on Switch. Played it on Xbox, obviously through Game Pass. But no, I am still churning with my 5-year-old Road to the Show player who is at this point downright amazing because it's but it's it looks still pretty good. But yeah, so I'm playing old versions of MLB The Show. I'm playing some modern, this current year Madden and 2K with the announcements of this week. Madden starts dripping out its player rankings that 2K announced that Kobe's going to be on the cover and some of their additions. So that pulled me back into some of those, but actually they're kind of always in my rotation in terms of playing some of that. So yep.
Yeah, I need to check back in on my Cincinnati Reds to see if Ellie De La Cruz has been upgraded since he's been killing it since he got brought up to the bigs, and also see if they've changed the game score skill sets of good old Joey Votto. So lots of good players coming up in the Reds. I need to see if my MLB The Show has benefited from that.
Nice. DB, anything you're looking forward to this coming week?
I am in September of my MLB. So I'll finally get to a contract year again. So it'd be fun to kind of see how that all plays out. That and kind of finishing out season 8 of a Madden franchise with an online league. So.
All right, nice. All right, well, that is it for episode number 299. Next week will be our big 300th episode, so please come and watch that. Thank you, everybody who joined us in the comments. Slow-mo, Paul's Gaming Live, Slow-mo, Backslap, Paul's Gaming Live, Newtonian, who actually had to leave not too long after he had jumped in, and Brap, Basement Radio Arcade Podcast. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming by. DB, Game Logic, thank you for joining me tonight. Any last words before we wrap up here? No? All right. I am TomMeister99. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, whether it was live or in the VOD. Join us next week where Mr. Game Logic will be the host for, like I said, episode number 300. That should be on our regular day on Sunday, I believe. So check us out then at normal time also. Thank you, everybody. Please keep safe out there, play those games, and we will see you next time.